Kelly's Eye, brought to you by Ellis Brown Architects.
Peter, in the summer of 1989, we stood beneath the Jubilee clock. I had a terrible cold, and we did a programme called Kelly's Eye. And now we have come to the 800th edition of Kelly's Eye. It's hard to believe.
Well, it is, because I suppose that means we've been doing this for 16 years.
Yes.
Time marches on, as they say. I suppose our beards weren't quite as white. They were only grey in those days. But,
That's right. Well,
anyway.
My hair was black, but that's another matter. What is Kelly's Eye looking at on this 800th edition?
Well, for this 800th edition, I'm looking at something. I don't know whether they got it second-hand or whether they got it on tick.
On tick.
Can you spot what I'm looking at then?
I think so. We've come to a very important building in this programme. Fortunately, the square here is relatively quiet at this time of the evening. I'm looking at a clock. Am I
Yes, you're looking at a one-fingered clock.
Yes.
So everybody now should know, yes, that's on the front of Castle Rushen. And it's surprising that in 16 years and 800 programmes we'd never looked at Castle Rushen.
Quite amazing. I think there's been passing reference to it when we did St Mary's Church and various things like that.
We probably did. Anyway, there in front of us is the clock, which of course we're told was presented by Elizabeth I.
I've always believed that.
Well, she probably did. But I think it's a little bit like the Irishman's shovel, or pick. It's had so many new handles and so many new heads, but it's still the original clock. It's interesting. There used to be a little brass plaque in there. I don't know whether it's still there about, behold, master, here am I at your command to tell the hour, and something like that anyway. Mm-hmm. But anyway, here it is on the front of the castle. The castle, of course, is old. Earliest references we go back to 1100 and something, but of course Alexander came over from Scotland and ransacked it, and it started again. And some time ago, when they were restoring it, and it wasn't the first restoration, Armitage Rigby, the architect for Lord Raglan, did a restoration, removing a lot of the add-ons and getting it back. But when it went from government property trustees to the Manx Museum, of course, perhaps restoration is the wrong word, they were repairing it where necessary in all the years that it had just had money splattered on it rather than spent on it. And when that happened, Frank Cowan, the architect, was in charge, and I think he bought Woolworths out of all the Lego that they had. And he very cleverly made a model of Castle Rushen, but using different colours.
Yes.
So as to identify the chronology of the building, which was very clever. I don't know whether he still got it or whether his grandchildren had run off with it. But he very cleverly built it up, because you sort of started with a keep, and then it worked out, and the keep got added to, and then we ended up with the bailey. That's the bit going round, and of course there was an inner moat at one time. That's now the Speaker's Garden, where they're about to put a statue of Captain Quilliam.
Yes.
Totally wrong place. He should be down on the harbour looking out to sea. That's where you'd find a sea captain, not hidden away in a garden. And then you have the glacis, which is this grass bank, which of course originally wasn't grass, it would have had slabs of stone. And that, of course, was added much later when ships had cannons and they could fire.
There was a suggestion that should be removed at one time as well, about 50 years ago.
Oh, was it? Right. Oh, I wasn't around then, I'm sure. But anyway, if the cannonballs came, you see, and hit that, they would then roll down the square. Yes. If they hit a straight wall, then they're likely to damage it. So that was the purpose of that. And of course, this was breached to get into the Speaker's Garden, where you go down by the War Memorial there.
It's a nice little area, that, isn't it?
Oh, it is an area, nice, quiet little area. But the thing is, it has served the island. It first of all was a stronghold, an area for defence of the island. It's been the home, not the permanent home, but the home when he was here, of the kings of Man, the lords of Man. Then, for a period in time, and quite some period in time, it was the prison.
Oh, yes, of course, that's right. And then the courthouse, wasn't it?
Well, yes, courthouse is still there.
Yes.
And I think...
not used now as a courthouse.
No, I think Mr. Morrill still uses it. It's nearer home than Douglas.
All right.
And it was also the lunatic asylum, that terrible word that nobody likes to know. But those who were afflicted were put in there, terrible damp conditions. And they were in one side, and the prisoners were in the other side.
Yes.
And I mean, even when you go in now, that place is damp. even in the summer months, it's sort of condensation with thick walls, etc. So that's where the poor unfortunates had to live. They got away before the prisoners. The new asylum up at Ballamona was built, which was terrific because it had hot water, it had running cold water, it had all sorts of things, and fresh air. And they got away in 1868, 69, and the prisoners didn't get away till the new prison in the 1890s. So it has served this continuous purpose right through, and of course now it's been restored and the room set out in period pieces.
Architecturally, though, you can't speak about this. I mean, you can't. A castle isn't something that's architectural, or is it?
Well, yes, I remember in Dusty Miller's It's a Fact book, it was referred to by him as the most perfect example of medieval military architecture. That's good enough for me.
Many of the most iconic buildings around the island have been designed by Ellis Brown Architects. Keep up with Ellis Brown today on Facebook or via ellisbrown.in.